Hello, Ambah here, and welcome to episode 5 of the Design Tales, a newish podcast from me where I talk about my knitting designs. I share some behind the scenes process, inspiration, talk about how the design came about, and share anything that might be relevant about knitting the design, yarn tips, anything I can think of along the way. Today I have 2 sibling designs to share with you. New designs, the Heart-igan, so named for its little heart motif, and the Heart-over, a pullover version. 2 sweet, lacy garments for you to wear. I'm excited to finally bring these to publication. They've been in process, I would say for about 8 months, because I started thinking about a little summery cardigan then. However, this design has been in evolution for about 12 years, so I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of this design in this podcast. I'll also talk about yarn choices, choosing your size, and some other insights into knitting this project. So it's July now in Australia, it's winter. I've got the fire burning so I can be cozy wearing this lighter weight knit. It's actually quite chilly outside. When I started thinking about this design, it was November last year, heading into the Australian summer. And I was thinking about knitting a lightweight cardigan, something to throw over dresses in linen. And I had ordered some linen for the project and was excited to get started. I wasn't quite sure what it would be. I was thinking something lacy, and then inspiration struck when I was invited by Gay from Fibre Mates to join her for a podcast episode that was booked for late January. And she mentioned that as part of a year-long knit-along that her and Louie and Lola Yarns are hosting this year over 2025, an Australian and New Zealand themed knit-along with Aussie designers and Aussie yarn stores and dyers. For February, they wanted to incorporate my heart lace patterns into a February Valentine's element of the cowl. I was pretty excited when she mentioned that and thought, it would be great to design the cardigan with the lace heart motif. And what if I knit it and wore it on the podcast? That would be really cool. As is often the case for me, my ambition and imagination exceeds what I'm actually able to knit. And I didn't finish that cardigan for the January podcast. However, I did cast on and get started. And that was the inspiration behind using the heart motif for this particular summer cardigan that I wanted to knit. And I started by swatching in the linen yarn that I had bought for the project. And I'll show you that swatch in a minute when I'm talking about gauges and yarn. However, I had just finished a project using this bright pink, and I had some extra skeins left from the other project and I just couldn't resist. So I ended up swatching this yarn and going with this yarn, which is a single ply wool. It's from Aimee, and I just loved the colour. That's the main reason. Being wool, it's a bit cozier. It's still absolutely an option to knit this up in a plant fibre like a linen or something to make it a bit cooler for summer. Depends on your climate. Here in Australia, our summers can get quite hot, although the nights can be cooler here by the coast, so it is still something that can be a throw over in the cooler evenings at times, as can the Heart-over. So that's the shorter version of the inspiration behind this design, but it all started around 12 years ago when I was designing a little lace necklace. And I feel like I want to cue a back in time wavy thing. Just imagine that. So let's go back to 2013, where I'd been designing since February, and it was a few months in, and I had an idea for a little lace necklace design, which became this Patali. It's a bit hard to see on my skin. Let me come a little bit closer. And while I was creating this design with a sweet leafy motif, I was quite enamoured by leafy lace. It occurred to me that I could turn those leaves into little hearts. And I did. So a fair amount of swatching later and trial and error, I came up with the first of the heart designs, which is Dreamy Valentine. I published that a bit less than 12 years ago, so that I published this in December 2013. I have knit quite a few of these over the years. This is one of the most recent. I knit this last year when Hobbii yarn reached out wanting a sample knit in their yarn. So this is in Hobbii yarn, I think it's called Unicorn. And this is a 2 skein fingering weight version, I believe. I'm pretty sure it is. Also at the time, around a year ago, I had knit another one of my lace designs with a chunky, super bulky yarn. I thought, oh, that would work really well for the Dreamy Valentine pattern as well. So I knit this up with super bulky. I'll link details below. I don't remember off the top of my head the details for this project. However, I just love the effect of that, and the hearts knit at a larger scale are so effective. And this is an earlier sample from 2013 when I first knit the pattern. I knit, I think, about 3 or 4 samples at the time. I didn't pull them all out. Just wanted to show you the variation between the fingering weight and bulky, just so you could see the contrast of yarn weights. And then over the coming years, I released several more patterns based on that lace. I've found quite a few occasions to use it. The next was a wrap scarf version of the Dreamy Valentine shawl, which has the pointed tip and then an even width rather than becoming a triangle. And it's knit in 2 halves and then joined in the center to make one long piece. I called this one Dark Valentine. I knit several samples of this as well, one with a fade gradient yarn and another that was narrow with a single skein. So this is the 2 skein version for a very cute little wrap. And then I also included a cow pattern, a sweet Valentine cow, which then later I expanded to include a hat. And this is actually the Adoria pattern. It's again a slightly different gauge. I used a lace weight plus a kid silk yarn with this. The Sweet Valentine cow has a fingering weight and perhaps a worsted weight option. So it's got a couple of options, whereas this one, the Adoria cow, has a single weight option, and the pattern includes the hat as well. Very cute. I do love the little love hearts. And then I think the stole wrap led me to be inspired to make a little shrug version, which is kind of similar. It starts at the end with the cuff, and the sleeve is worked in the round from the cuff up to this point, which is here, and then divided to be worked flat, which becomes the back part of this design. And then the other side is worked the same, and it's joined in the middle. So it's a symmetrical, it's hard to see the lace. The hearts travel up this way and that way symmetrically. This is knit in a lace weight yarn. And the pattern also includes, I think it's a DK weight option as well. So it's knit at a larger gauge, and that increases size options and yarn weight options. So that's a cute little shrug, the Valentine's shrug. And I'll link to all of the heart patterns below in a Ravelry bundle, so they'll all be gathered there and you can look through the projects and different designs if you feel inspired by what I'm showing you today. And then I have incorporated the lace in a couple of other designs. The big heart wrap, I don't have that. That's one of the few that I've given away. I do like to try and keep my samples. The big heart wrap I gave to someone special, and that incorporated bands of the heart lace, which I then created another design incorporating bands of the heart lace paired with mosaic hearts as well. So this is the Knit Love wrap. In this design I used a beautiful mini skein set to knit the lace and coordinating heart mosaic sections. And I also have a sample that's using 3 full skeins for this. So the mini skeins, you would need 2 minis of each colour, or you could use 12 different minis and have each section a different colour, which would be really sweet too. And then that inspired a triangular shawl version of that, the Knit Love shawl, which also incorporates the heart lace motif and the mosaic motif. And this is a huge DK weight version. The pattern also includes a fingering weight version of this same project. And this one I use a beautiful colour change yarn for the mosaic, just to add an extra dimension to it. And so that's 12 years of inspiration leading up to here we are now with the little cardigan version and pullover version. Once I'd made the cardigan, I thought often people want a pullover version or option, so I'll work on that at the same time. And I found this gorgeous green La Bien Aimee colour, which I couldn't resist for a pullover version. So back to the yarn, I used a single ply merino fingering weight yarn. You could use applied merino or plant fibres. When I was originally swatching, I specifically looked for a linen yarn, and I've knit with a few linen yarns over the years, and my favourite are the yarns that have a chained texture. So they, instead of being a single thread or plied thread, they're constructed with a chain construction. So the thread is made up of a chainette. It's a little bit hard to see. Perhaps you will see it if I hold it very close. Which I find more forgiving while knitting. It's a little bit more flexible on the hand, a bit softer. The single unchained linen can be quite rough, just a little bit harder. I think it's worth it for the result. I love linen, but I have found that I love the chained version more. Years ago, I discovered the Hobbii Knits reed yarn, which is a chained linen. However, that's become discontinued, unfortunately, and I wasn't able to find any more of that. I had a tiny bit in my stash, but not enough. And also, I'd like to use a yarn that people could access as well. So I went to the trusty yarn sub site, yarnsub.com, where I typed in Hobbii Knits reed yarn, and it popped up with a number of alternative options for me, including the Knit Picks Lindy chain fingering weight, which is actually merino, 70% linen and 30% cotton. So it's not pure linen, but it's a natural plant-based fibre, which is a bit lighter weight for summer. So I had ordered that thinking about making a linen cardigan and knit my first swatch with that yarn. I'm swatching the shoulder join here too. And then, as I said earlier, I just became really enamored with this bubblegum pink colour. So I changed direction and decided to knit the cardigan with the pink. However, I am determined to knit one in this linen as well. It's less inspiring now that it's winter, but it is on my plan. And interestingly enough, one of the test knitters bought exactly this colour of this yarn and knit their cardigan with this yarn, and it's very inspiring to see that. It looks fantastic. So it's on my list for next summer. We'll see though, there's so many things on my list. So yeah, you can play around with the yarn. Swatching, of course, is important, especially before knitting a garment, because you want it to fit the way it's intended to. In the pattern, I give the blocked dimensions for gauge. So the stitch count and the row count over 4 inches after blocking. And I often get asked for the pre-blocking gauge because people are knitting and want to just maybe check the length and see if it's on track. And that's just something I don't give in a pattern because it varies too much. If you're knitting with a superwash yarn, after you block, it's going to grow a lot. If you're knitting with a non-superwash yarn or perhaps a plant fibre yarn, it's not going to grow anywhere near as much. So I can't give a universal pre-blocked measurement because it really depends on the yarn that you're knitting. So what I do, and what I suggest that you do, is that you knit your swatch, and you might need to knit, and you may need to knit several swatches before you know that you've got the correct gauge, changing needle sizes if required. That you measure your swatch before and after blocking, and that way you can determine how much it is going to grow with blocking, and that's really helpful information when you're knitting something like this too, where you're knitting from the waist up. You want to make sure that you've got enough length before you start separating for the armhole, that you have enough length there, and your blocked gauge should tell you that if you're on gauge, you can expect the measurements given in the pattern. But if you want to be able to double check along the way and be sure, then having the information about how much your gauge will grow with blocking or stay the same is helpful. So that's why I don't include the pre-blocked gauge information in a pattern. It's something that is really worth measuring yourself though, and I do that myself just so I can tell how much something might grow, how much I can expect it to grow. And you do need to do a nice, big, decent sized swatch to have a clear understanding of how that yarn will behave with blocking. It's also a good time to practice the lace pattern. When you're swatching, you can knit it a few times and get a feel for it, which will help you in the process of knitting the garment if you're feeling confident in the lace. And on that, the pattern includes only charted instructions for the lace. There are multiple charts for every size in this pattern. So there's too many for me to write out every chart. It just would be massive. Some testers have found that it was great that then they normally would prefer to use written instructions, but they were happy with the charted instructions. If you're someone that really needs written instructions, then unfortunately, it probably isn't for you. But that said, again, if you want to practice perhaps with one of my earlier designs, practice knitting the lace from the written and get a feel for the lace, you might find that knitting from the charted instructions is achievable for you after practicing. Maybe not. I understand our brains work differently. It's just something I wasn't able to provide with this particular pattern. Once you've chosen your yarn and you've swatched, you'll need to pick a size to knit. Also, perhaps choose which version if you're going to knit the pullover or the cardigan. The cardigan and pullover are both designed to have 2 different length options. So there's the cropped, which I've made in both versions, the cropped and the regular length. The regular length is designed to hit just around the hip bone here. So that's a longer length for those who prefer their garments a bit longer. And the cropped is great for wearing with high-waisted garments or waisted frocks, that kind of thing. The cardigan has been designed to have an open front. There is an option for a waist button if you'd like to have something there to close it, either here or at the hip length. And I added that in there because I found myself on occasion wearing it and wanting it just closed at the waist. So I have a little pin that I pinned there, but in the pattern I added an optional button for you to use instead. So the overall bust measurement for both is the same. That said, the cardigan does allow for this little gap in that measurement, which is outlined in the full dimensions, which are on the last page of the patterns. And I do recommend that you go and look at those full dimensions to help you choose the best size for you to make. There are 7 sizes in the pattern, and there are the information given is the finished bust measurement and then a 2-fit range. And the 2-fit range is 2.5 inches either side of that finished bust measurement. So if your actual bust measurement fits on the smaller side of the 2-fit, the finished bust measurement, then the garment will fit a little more loosely on you. There'll be a bit more positive ease. And if, like me, you're on the higher side of the 2-fit range, for example, I knit the size 3, I'm a 43-inch bust, which gives about 1.5 inches negative ease for my size. And the pattern allows for up to about 2.5 inches negative ease. With the cardigan, you could get away with a bit more negative ease because of the open front. It just has a little bit more space there for you to allow that. With the pullover, because it's closed, you want to probably avoid having too much negative ease. The allowance of about 2.5 inches is pretty reasonable. I'll pop this on now. So comparison, this is the pullover, and again, size 3 with a 43-inch bust. There is room for that to have a bit more negative ease. And certainly I could knit a size up and have a baggier version with more positive ease. I prefer a fitted garment, so I chose to go with that little bit of negative ease for my size. That's just my preference. Another thing to consider when choosing your size is all of the measurements really, but I would say important to point out are the bicep measurement and your actual bust measurement. So on that last page with all the finished measurements, you can see what the actual garment size will be once it's finished if you have knit to gauge, the specified gauge. So a good way to choose a size is to measure yourself, perhaps a garment that you like the fit of, that you'd like a similar fit of for this project, and see where the bicep measurements fit on that size chart and the bust measurement. And also consider how much positive and negative ease you'd like to have. Again, if you choose a garment that you already own that fits in the way that you would like it to fit, then that's helpful in you choosing which size, because you can measure that and compare it against the measurements given on the measurement table. There is a little bit of wriggle room with the pattern too. If you knit to a slightly smaller gauge, if you used a slightly thinner yarn, for example, a light fingering weight yarn, then you could expect a slightly smaller variation. And again, if you knit to a slightly larger gauge, using a slightly thicker yarn and slightly larger needle, for example, a sport weight yarn, then you could slightly increase the size. So if you're a little bit in between sizes, that's a way that you can tweak the sizing to suit you better. Otherwise, yeah, there's 7 sizes to choose between, and if you're kind of in between, you can size up for a more relaxed, oversized look, which some of our testers have made, and they look fabulous, and size down for a more fitted look. So if you're thinking that you want a nice fitted sleeve, then you perhaps want to be looking at the arm circumference and choosing something that's closer to the fit that's right for you there. It can get a bit tricky because our bodies are all different, and it is graded to a kind of middle of the road range for each size, which is a certain bicep to bust ratio and length, and that one size doesn't fit all. So you'll need to weigh up whether you want to size down or size up, or what's going to be the best result for you and how you'd like to wear your garment. Another note is that the sleeve circumference is the same all the way down. It starts with the ribbing, and in my version I just use the same needle size. The ribbing pulls in an amount that I'm pretty happy with here for that finished fit. You might find that you want to bring in the ribbing a little more, and in that case you could use smaller needles for the ribbing. It's suggested in the pattern for a tighter cuff fit. Some of our testers found that to be the case, particularly if they were knitting a bit of a longer sleeve, because it does end up quite loose where the arm narrows. Some knitters opted to knit just a couple of repeats for a shorter sleeve, and they look fantastic. That works really well as well. And that was just the same because you're knitting it for the bicep measurement. I would not go down necessarily a size for the ribbing. So there's a few tips there to help you choose a size that will work for you. And then finally, construction. How is it knit? It is both the pullover and the cardigan are worked from the bottom up. The cardigan is worked flat back and forth, whereas the pullover is joined and worked in the round up to the underarm separation. For both of them, they're separated, and then the fronts are each worked separately and the back worked separately. Then on all versions, they're joined at the shoulder with a 3-needle bind off, and I've specifically made it so that the pattern lines up at the shoulder. And then the sleeves are cast on and worked separately and joined here with a 3-needle bind off, a stretchy one, which helps ensure that there's nice movement there. If you don't do a stretchy bind off, it can be a bit tight. I actually did that for my first version and redid it. It was just a bit unforgiving in the arms there. And then the front stitches on the cardigan are picked up all the way around, and ribbing is worked. There is also an I-cord bind off for a nice neat finish. You don't have to do that. If you don't like an I-cord bind off, you can just bind off in pattern. Then with the cardigan, you're done, block it. With the pullover, you'll pick up the neck stitches and finish the collar, which is a little V-neck collar. And then get knitting and make your beautiful garment and wear it. And hopefully I'll get to see pictures of it, because that's my favourite part, seeing what you knit. Our wonderful testers have knit a lovely array of Heart-igans and Heart-overs, and with a variety of fits. Some have opted for more oversized, some more relaxed, some like mine, more fitted, and they all just look fantastic. And just a wonderful array of colours. There's been some beautiful greens, reds, pinks, almost, I guess, a rainbow of Heart-igans and Heart-overs, which is pretty exciting to see. So hopefully you're inspired to make one of your own, or perhaps one of the other heart lace designs, and hopefully I'll get to see them somewhere in the wild or online. Feel free to post comments and questions in the chat below. I read every one, and if you've got suggestions for future episodes, let me know if there's anything you'd like to see. And you can always ask me questions, pattern related questions. I have an email address on my patterns that you can use. That's the best way to contact me with your questions. I'll post links to everything below so you can find the patterns that I've referenced, yarn sub, the podcast. I'll try and remember everything that I've mentioned in this episode and post all the links below. And another thing, I'll publish this video when the pattern is newly released, and there will be a special introductory offer. I offer that on all of my new release patterns. So hopefully you get to see this in time to snag that. If you didn't, if you're watching this video down the track, I do have a couple of promotions that come up. One is if you subscribe to my newsletter list, new subscribers get a coupon for 30% off my patterns. So that's a great way to snag a discount as well if you're not a subscriber. And you'll also, as a subscriber, hear about all my new patterns as they come out. So you'll get to hear about the introductory offer then as well. And something I've been doing for the last few months is a bit of Friday fun, Friday. I have a 50% off Friday featured pattern, and what I've been doing is trawling through my archives and picking an old favorite, sometimes not that old, maybe a couple of months old, sometimes 5, 10 years old, and revisiting it and sharing it with a 50% off for the week discount offer. And it's just a bit of fun. It's a good way to remember some of the old patterns, some old favorites, and for some of you, you may not have heard of them because there's been so many, or you've just discovered me. So that's been fun as well. So keep a lookout. One day, I'm sure Heart-igan and Heart Over will become a Friday pattern. Thanks for watching this episode. I hope it's been helpful and also maybe tempting. Maybe you'll be inspired to knit a Heart-igan or a Heart Over as a result of it. I'm looking forward to wearing mine as the months get warmer and hopefully knitting the linen version as well. I'll see you next time.